Hi, this is Kevin Trainer, and I want to welcome you to the demonstration of how to create a data flow diagram using Visio 2013. So what I'm going to do is to create a context diagram, which is really the only data flow diagram that we're going to concentrate on in this course. And I'm going to use Visio to do it. I have an icon. So what you're seeing here is a picture of my Windows 7 virtual machine that's running on my Mac, and pretty much should run like any version of Windows. But of course, whenever you make a claim like that, you find out that you're wrong sooner or later. And I have an icon on my taskbar for Visio 2013. So I'm just going to click that and heat up Visio 2013. And here what we're going to do is we're going to pick what kind of diagram template we want to use. And we've got two possibilities: featured or categories. And this screen is a little sticky. So once you use a particular template, it's usually easy to find under featured, but let's just imagine that you haven't. So we're going to go to categories. And what we do is we're going to scroll down to the bottom, and one of the categories is called software and database. And on my machine, it's right in the middle of the last row. And we click on that. And we're going to see all the kind of diagrams that they have available. And in the second row, there are two diagrams that call themselves data flow diagrams. There's the one that uses the circles, which is going to use the notation from Jordan, DeMarco, and Constantine. And then there's the one that uses the rounded rectangles, which is the one from Gain and Sarson. And I'm going to use the one from Gain and Sarson because that's what they use in our textbook. And it's a pretty diagram as well. So I'm going to pick that. And then you have to click on Create. Okay, and what we see on the left is we see a palette of the shapes that we can use. And in the middle here, we have a piece of electronic paper. And the first thing I'm going to do with the paper is that typically when I do data flow diagrams, I do them with the paper in landscape mode. I find that kind of helpful. And the way to do that is to go up to the menu and click on Design. And then over on the left side of the toolbar, Orientation. And we're going to pick Landscape. Okay, and now we have a landscape view. So we're going to do a pretty simple context diagram, and it's an example that I do a lot called the alchemy system. And the alchemists were people from the Middle Ages who believed sort of in the days of pre-chemistry and pre-physics that you could do a lot of things that you can't do. And one of the things that they believed is that you could turn lead into gold. They were both heavy, and they figured you just had to add some kind of a shiny golden property to lead and you'd have gold. So that's what my alchemy system does. It turns lead into gold. And I'll comment on that a little bit later. So the first thing that we want to do is we want to define the system itself. And to do that, from the shapes we have, we want a process shape. So we click on that and drag it out onto the diagram right in the middle. Okay. And what we're going to do is we're going to double click in the shape that's there. And we're going to type in alchemy system. Okay? Now, a problem that I have is that the type is too small. So if I highlight all that type, I get a little box that comes up where I can pick the point size. I like the Calibri type, but I'd like it to be maybe, let's say 24 point. Okay? So I did that. Now the problem is now that my shape is such that it's not reading right. So let's grab on to one of the sides. I clicked on it, and now you can see the little place to grab on, and I make it a little bigger here. And there's another place to make it bigger. And I kind of like it about that size, right in the middle, okay? And I might even want to make the type a little bigger. So let's double click the type. And let's go to 36 point. Yeah, alchemy system, real big. I love that. So who would be the external entities who our alchemy system would deal with? Well, we need to get lead, and we need to sell gold. So instead of calling this an external entity or a source or sink, this template calls it an interface, but that's what we want. So we're going to pull it out here, and we're going to have this be the lead supplier. So let's just call that lead supplier. And again, I don't really like the size of that type. That's a little small for my taste. So I'm going to make that 14 point. All right. And that's going to read a little bit better. And then the other entity that's going to interact with my system that is outside of the system is a gold dealer to whom we're going to sell gold bars. So let's take that interface again and pull it down to the lower right. Okay. And double click so we can type in it. And let's type gold dealer. Gold dealer. And let's make that 14 point type as well. Okay. So we'll make that 14 point. And we've got a deal. So now we can see we have this. Now, I'd like to have my symbols laid out such that you can read the diagram from the top left to the bottom right. So when you really see this, we're going to start with lead, and then that's going to go through the alchemy system, and that's going to come out as gold. Now, we all know that you can't turn lead into gold, at least not economically, and I'll comment on that before we're done. But for right now, we're going to pretend that we can. All right. And these boxes for the external entities are resizable as well. So let's make those a little bit bigger. So we get some idea. That'll give us a little bit more room to attach the data flows to them. Okay, there's my gold dealer down here. Okay, so from the lead supplier, I'm going to get gold bars. I'm sorry, lead ingots. Okay, those are just bars of lead. Okay, so we can, in a data flow diagram, use a data flow to represent material and in addition to data. So we're just going to pull that out there. And we're going to hook the arrowhead side of the arrow to lead supplier. And we're going to let go of the mouse button. And now let's take the other end and pull it into the alchemy system and let go. And now we have a data flow line that has a flow from lead supplier to alchemy system. And now we just have to name it. So typically to name things, you get over top of them and you double click. So we're going to double click here. And so what we're going to do is we're going to get lead ingots. I think it's ingots. Is that spell check? Yeah, good. So that's good. And again, I don't really like the size of that type. I'd like that to be 14-point type. Okay, now there's always the question when you name a data flow, whether it should be in the singular or in the plural. And what you should really do is you should have it reflect one transaction. And probably from the lead supplier, we're going to get a supply of lead ingots at any one time, probably a truckload or a half a truckload. So I think it should be in the plural because at one time we'll get plural, okay? And then the other thing that's going to happen is we're going to do our magic alchemy within the system, and then we're going to send to the dealer, we're going to send some gold bars. So let's create another data flow. And again, we click on that, we pull it out, and the from is the alchemy system, so that's good. And then let's pull the to side with the arrowhead down into the gold dealer. Okay, and click off of that, and it's looking all right. Okay, and let's do a double click on top of that. And what we're going to send, again, I don't think we'll send one gold bar. I think we'll send a shipment of gold bars. So let's call it gold bars. We're going to send. Okay, and now we're going to make this 14 point so it's readable. All right. Now, again, a point that I made during the lecture about these data flow diagrams is that there's usually a feedback loop between each of the external entities and the system. Now, that's not always the case. There are times when the external entity is just a net supplier, it's a source, or it's a net consumer, it's a sink. But more typically, you're going to see that entities that interact with our system send something and they get some things back. Sometimes they send 2 or 3 or 4 things and they get 1 or 2 or 3 or 4 or 10 things back. Okay? So what's going to come back? Well, if we get lead ingots from the lead supplier, okay, then we're going to have to pay them. Okay? So we're probably going to want something else. We're probably going to want to also get an invoice. So let's, I don't know how that happened. Let's undo that. Let's pull out another data flow. And let's say that we want to also get an invoice. So let's pull that. Okay, and we generally don't want to cross lines, so let's pull this over here. Okay, and let's say that we're going to get both lead ingots and an invoice. So let's have an invoice there. And again, one of the things I don't like about this tool is that the type's a little small. So I like to get it up to about 14 point. Okay, so we get a shipment of ingots and 1 invoice. And then we're going to send back payment. Okay, and because of the fact that one of the rules about data flow diagrams is that we don't want to have two objects on it with the same name. If we're going to get a payment from the gold dealer, then that's going to be a payment. And if we're going to send a payment to the lead supplier, then that's going to be a payment. So we're going to have to come up with a name that distinguishes them from each other. Okay, so let's call the payment to the lead supplier payment for lead. Okay, so we'll have a data flow that's coming out of the Alchemy system, and it's going up to the lead supplier. Again, you just pull it up till it lights up green, and then you let go. And click off of it, and you see that's going great. And we double click so we can name it. And let's call this payment for lead. And give it a double click, maybe a triple click here to get, yeah, triple click to get it all highlighted, and then make it 14 point. Okay, that's looking good. And here I just remembered that this isn't looking as pretty as I remembered it used to look when I've done it before. And the fact is that there are themes. So if up on the menu, right now we're still in the design tab, but if we had been in the home, we would go to the design tab, and we can see that there are several different themes that we can use. And let's use the first one. I kind of like that. It's kind of blue on blue, looks kind of pretty. Maybe it's a little subtle for some screens, but I kind of like it. All right, so let's do that. Okay, and you can change the theme. You could change the theme to just plain. Here's one that's kind of all gray. Actually, I like the second one, which is probably what we had before. Okay, so we've got that. That's looking good. And one of the things I just want to point out is that we have a loop here. Okay, now we send payment for lead, but we never ordered the lead. Okay, so let's think about that. So let's have another flow that's coming out of the Alchemy system, and it's going up to the lead supplier. Okay, and let's call this a, just do a double click. Okay, and let's call this an order, because we're only going to order one kind of thing, lead. So we don't have to worry about it having the same name as something else. All right, so that looks good. Okay, so how does this work? We send an order, they send the lead ingots, they send an invoice, and then after we get the ingots and the invoice, then we have the okay that we send the payment for lead. So you can really see this as a closed system experience between the lead supplier and the Alchemy system. All right. Now let's go down and look at the interaction that the Alchemy system has with the gold dealer. Okay. So we have the gold bars, right? So let's say that we're going to send the gold bars, okay? But we have to, we'll probably, let's say we have a standing agreement with the gold dealer that we'll send the gold bars and we'll just get them at today's price of gold, okay? So we can just simply send gold bars, okay? And we probably ought to send some kind of a shipping manifest or something like that with it. So let's send something else, okay? And let's kind of move that up a little bit. Okay, so then let's send a shipping manifest. So they know who the gold bars came from, some kind of document. Okay. Make that up to 14. Okay. And now, so they get the manifest and the gold bars, and they're just going to send us the payment. Okay. So let's, oh, I know what we're going to do. We're going to send them an invoice. So let's not, that's another kind of invoice. So let's call it shipping manifest. Here's where you have the problem that you have these interactions with different external entities that you need to characterize in different ways. So let's fix that. So let's turn the invoice that we get from the lead supplier, it's called, let's change that name from just plain invoice to invoice for lead. Okay. And when we do that, we're kind of crowding out this line here, and we can highlight, we can select it and we can move it just a little bit so they're not over top of each other. All right. And instead of shipping manifest down here, we'll double click and let's call this invoice for gold. Okay, so we're sending them the gold bars and an invoice, and we're going to expect to get a payment back. All right, so let's do that. Let's take a data flow, and it's flowing out of the gold dealer. So we'll just let that light up in green on that end, and then we'll pull the other end around and light up the alchemy system, and it'll redraw the line the way we want, and double click on it, and we'll call that payment for gold. And it's a triple click to get all the text highlighted, and we'll turn that into 14 point. All right. So that's it. That's really all the processing that goes on in the system. Now, here's what I want to point out. Okay, if you do a full set of data flow diagrams instead of just the context diagram that we have, oh yeah, in fact, we want to call it a context diagram. We'll do that in a minute. But if you do a full set, you would get to some point within the diagrams and the specifications that supported them where you realize that you couldn't turn lead into gold. You could not write a spec for a process, one of the sub-processes from one of the sub-diagrams that would turn lead into gold, okay? And one of the good things about doing a full set of data flow diagrams is that you can uncover some assumptions that you have about what inputs you're able to turn into what outputs that are wrong. Okay, now that's useful. On the other hand, you can also know, kind of by eyeballing it, that we can't turn lead into gold. Okay, so I don't think it's worth doing a whole set of leveled hierarchical data flow diagrams and specs is simply to expose the fact that this is a wrong-headed system. All right, but we're trying to have some fun here. Okay, now the other thing we want to do, let's go to the Home tab again, and let's pull down a text tool, I think what we do is we load up the cursor to create a text box. And then we put it right here. And we can type context diagram. Somehow I don't seem to be able to type. Context diagram. And this I'll make 24 point. So that's 24 point now. And we've got that there. And maybe I'd want to, oh, if you want to get your pointer tool back from your text tool, you need to go up here and click on pointer tool. So now you've got a pointer again. And now we can drag that context diagram maybe down there. That looks good. Okay, so that's kind of pretty. So this motif that I've used where I've kind of lined up the inputs on the same side and lined up the outputs on the same side, so you can see this kind of circular flow between the system and each of these external entities. This is, I think, a good practice. And you can look at this and you can see a couple of things. One is you can tell the operations of the lead supplier and the gold dealer are outside of the system. And you can also see that the only interface that they have with the system are that they accept the data flows that they get and they send the data flows that they send. And that what is inside the Alchemy system is going to be described elsewhere. Now, traditionally, we did that with a leveled set of complete data flow diagrams and specs. At this point, we want to do this context diagramming exercise so that we can see the flow characteristics, which I think are important, and also we can understand the scope limitations of the Alchemy system. And then we're just going to stop. We're not going to go into a full set of data flow diagrams because we're going to move on to some other kinds of tools like use cases in particular that are going to do an even better job of capturing the requirements. So you have to save this when you're done. So you would go over here and you say File, Save As, and I'm going to put it on this computer and into Documents and UWM Teaching. I can put it wherever I want. So I'm going to put it into Common Teaching because this is really a common thing, the systems analysis course. And I'm just going to put it right in here. So I'm going to call it Alchemy System Context Diagram. Okay, and save it. And one of the things with these Microsoft tools, starting in version 2010, I think, you can also save it as a PDF, which is really good for people who don't have this tool installed. So one of the things I like my students to do is to actually save it also as a PDF. This is the current folder. And I'm just changing the type and change it to PDF and say I want to save. And here I've got a PDF. And the nice thing about the PDF is that you're able to resize it, and the text can get really, really big when you resize it without getting all jaggy, and everything's nice. So that is the demonstration of how to create a context diagram, a little bit of the method, and a little bit of the mechanics of using Visio 2013. So I'm going to say bye now, and I'll see you soon. Bye-bye.